I'm Cohasset Town Manager Chris Sr. On this week's episode, we'll be with Emergency Management Director Glenn Pratt, look behind the scenes of the town's response to this emergency and others. We'll take a look at the IT side of things here in Cohasset, which have taken on added significance with e-learning and e-government, with Ron Menard, the town's CIO. Correspondent Jack Cunningham talks with Phil Mahoney about the town's virtual Memorial Day ceremonies. Larry Corthell meets with some local business owners. That and more on this week's edition of Cohasset Comment. I'm here today in the Cohasset EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, which is the hub of the town's response to public health emergencies and all kinds of emergencies. And I'm here today with EOC Director Glenn Pratt. Welcome to the show, Glenn.
Hi, Chris, and thanks for coming up to the EOC, and thanks for having us on.
Now, one of the great things about this facility is simply having this facility, right? I mean, how many towns of our size have an EOC like this?
Chris, you know, when I talk to my counterparts in emergency management and look around at other towns, we have a facility that probably is in the top tier around the state. Probably Swampscott has a better one because the governor lives there right now. But we've been building this out over the last 10 years with money from the taxpayers of Cohasset and grants from the state government.
Actually, I remember my very first trip here was actually the week before I started. It was a big snowstorm. Right. I drove up through the snowstorm, and I came in, and I was impressed. I'm like, wow, this is bigger than one I had in my 200,000 person town in New York.
So what we do here, this is the center for where we make all the decisions and operate during any sort of an emergency. This particular emergency going on now is the longest by far that we have actively been here in the EOC every day with operations going on.
So what is the role of emergency management in a crisis like this?
So in a crisis, the emergency management agencies at all levels is to coordinate and support all the responding departments and agencies. Whoever's responding to the emergency, our role is to support them with personnel, materials, and all sorts of logistics. And that's what's been working very well here in Cohasset.
And the one that I think most people hear about is MEMA, which is the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, right?
So Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency is broken into 4 regions in the state. We happen to be in Region 2. And they have local coordinators. So we hear from MEMA every day. They call to see what we need and how we're doing. And if you look at the screens behind you, this is called Emergency Management Web EOC. So we have a running, accurate tally of what's going on in the state at all times. And this is a MEMA product. And we can add things about Cohasset onto that database also. So whenever we're operating from here, we're always watching that to see what's going on.
So it's great. So we've actually been able to leverage technology a lot in this center, it appears.
Absolutely. We have been tied into the town's fiber network here at the EOC. Anything that we can do at the public safety building, fire and police in Cohasset, we can replicate it and do it here if we had to. And we also can broadcast on 143 TV directly from here.
So so one of the things is this is not only a center, but it's also a backup facility at the same time.
It's a backup facility, it's a center, and it's very busy the last 3 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I also know that when we're not in an emergency situation, this is also often used for training. Because I've been down here with the selectmen before, and I know that the police use it, fire uses a fair amount too.
Right. It's the only space in town that the public safety departments have that they can have large-scale meetings or training, which are required all the time. Truth be known, if there's a big undercover operation going on with the police, they'll stage here and get ready to go. So we make it available as much as we can to any department that has a need.
Now, every emergency has its own kind of complexities and challenges. What's been the biggest challenges with this whole public safety, I should say public health emergency?
So the biggest challenge with this emergency, which everybody hears on the news every night, is obtaining PPE, personal protective equipment. It's been a difficult challenge. We did have some on hand here that we had built up over the years, but not nearly enough to keep up. So as we've found supplies, we've ordered them in, but we've also tried to find ways to stretch the supplies we have. How can we slow our burn rate, if you will? One of the interesting things is that we came across a system of ultraviolet light sanitizing, which the public safety departments are using very successfully to extend the life of their masks, their N95 masks.
You know, the real great story about that is it's not something we had to import, right? It was something we found right here in Cohasset.
We have, in all of our plans over the years, have always relied heavily on assets of the school department. And they have come through unbelievably this time. But what we found out when we were looking for ultraviolet light sanitizing equipment is absolutely, and like I say, it's the school department's resources are deep, and everything they have has been available to us in this emergency, right down to their food service operation. The school food service operation has been providing daily meals that are used for some of the work the senior center is doing. So one of the responsibilities of emergency management is to take the best practice from one department and see if the other one's doing it too. And so we're really making progress on that. And so far, so good.
So now one of the biggest challenges, of course, is that we don't have an end date on this, right? Now we've begun the reopening, thankfully, and we'll see how that continues to roll out. That said, obviously the work area doesn't end until the emergency is actually over. And in fact, it really doesn't ever end because we're always planning for the next emergency.
Correct. One of the things we were planning to have an exercise on in March this year was some sort of a emergency for public health. We had started talking about it in January, not knowing this was upon us, and so now that exercise seems superfluous because we've learned a lot.
And that's one of the things about having an emergency management center. We were talking when the very first inklings of this came out, and it was being reported in the press, and it was still seemingly far away. We started to talk about ways that we can protect ourselves and prepare just in case. And that was, we got some supplies, we talked about the training, right? Those are all things that we have regular conversations about.
We did. It was interesting. We decided early in January that we would go out and help the Board of Health stock up some of their supplies, which we did. And we thought we were in great shape then. Little do we know that it wasn't a very long supply. So that's been the biggest thing, is coordinating the protective equipment.
And what this whole resource allows us to do is plan, right? And because when you're in a crisis, you don't have time to plan, you have to react.
We have to react, we have to execute we have to set the plan, and we have to execute it. But we had been accumulating a stockpile of emergency supplies here. And when I cracked into some of the supplies we had on our shelf here, I found the packing list on some of the items were dated in 2006. So we've been getting prepared slowly for the last 10 to 12 years.
You know, they don't expire, right?
They don't expire. Our mask doesn't expire.
And I think that's one of the key lessons of this whole experience, is that planning matters, and you can't plan for things you don't. You can't specifically plan for things you don't know. The most important thing you can do is plan to be flexible. You know, the general things that that might happen with. We deal regularly with storms, right? With snowstorms and hurricanes and trees down. Something like this, though, has always been on the planning list. And I remember we actually we did a drill a couple of years ago where we had to push out inoculations, if I recall.
Correct. Emergency dispensing site drill. The other thing that we always planned for was continuance of government operations. Never expecting we would have to put it into effect right now. It's always one of those things down the road, but not so. And that's working tremendously because of the hard work of all the departments, but I think IT is really taking the burden on that. The other thing is that the town meeting format and setup undoubtedly will use some of the equipment and materials that we've had here at the ready for a number of years. So never thought of that 2 months ago, but we're here and we have it. So we're in terrific shape compared to our neighbors and what most people have, which is forward thinking by the taxpayers. You know, when we've asked for things over the years, we get it. So now it pays off.
Exactly. Again, the old ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure thing, right?
Right.
So the EOC is quite a lot of ounces of prevention, actually. So any closing words, Glenn?
No, I think that I'd want to thank all the department heads for the way we're working together. It's not a single person that's not been able to pitch in with whatever their department has. We haven't used them yet, but we have 40 trained CERT volunteers who are standing by ready to go for whatever assignment we might have. It's possible town meeting might be the first assignment they have in this emergency. But I think it's working well, and we thank everyone for staying safe and following our guidance.
Again, that's just a great point too. We have, it's a staff and volunteer collaboration. That's really what makes this go.
Correct. Yeah,
so,
right.
Thank you very much, Glenn, and thank you all for watching. We are here down in the Emergency Operations Center of Cohasset's Emergency Operations Department. Thank you. Cohasset Common Correspondent Jack Cunningham now talks with Phil Mahoney, the town's Veteran Services Officer, about virtual Memorial Day.
Thank you, Chris. Now, let's see what Phil Mahoney's been doing with the veterans during this whole outbreak. Phil, tell us a little bit about how you've been handling everything with the coronavirus outbreak, what you guys have been doing to help veterans and families affected by this whole situation.
Sure. It hasn't been as hard for me as other towns because as a part-time VSO, we almost operate virtually all the time. I'm dealing with phone calls and emails as opposed to a full-time person that really requires that building to be open for face-to-face. So that piece has not been that hard. Obviously, the outreach side of it is a little more difficult because you want to be able to get as many folks the services they need. So a little bit of a challenge, but not nearly as difficult for someone like myself who kind of operates like that anyways. So that would be on the VSO side. What you can see here, obviously, based on the circumstances, we can't do the traditional parade, which is such a big showing in Cohasset. So we've taken a little bit of an alternate approach where we get the healing field up, we get veterans from Memorial Park, and we're going to try to create a documentary that's a tribute to all of Cohasset's veterans from every conflict. It also incorporates our wonderful tradition of the healing field and the Memorial Day parade. So instead of gathering on Memorial Day, we'll show that documentary that will include some bits and pieces from things that we're filming now and have some material from past parades and some really great photos of some of the older veterans in town from every conflict from the Revolution to the present.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the interview. Now, back to you, Chris.
I'm here in the Cohasset Learning Commons in the high school with our CIO, Ron Menard. Ron is the center point for all of the work that the town's IT department has done. In fact, he's built it over the last 5 years. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate being here.
So not that IT has been anything other than an essential part of our conversation since you got here, but it's taken on even a bigger role. But tell us a little bit about how you got here and your time here.
So I'm going on my 6th year in Cohasset. We've built a foundational crew of IT support staff consisting of systems analysts, database admins, deputy CIO, to name a few, technical support specialists. We've built and we've supplied them with training and skill sets that essentially manages all of our needs, primarily for alt IT and technical needs for all departments. Currently, we're looking at improving those support needs through additional training, and so we've built a 5-year program based on staff and requirements, and so it's turned out really well. We've put up a phenomenal infrastructure, and in the COVID-19 era, it's been instrumental in us being able to manage as well as we have.
Now, I remember when we hired you, when you first came to me and said to me, Chris, you don't have an IT network. So we've really made some great strides in 5 years.
I remember that operational test I had to take before I got the job. I had to put up a phone system, if I remember correctly, without any network whatsoever, and I was wondering how I was going to pull that one out of my hat. So a little bit of dialogue, and some years later, we got it all built.
So I think it's clear that one of the biggest challenges we've had in this entire COVID-19 crisis is going from analog to digital, really all the way across the board. And I guess your biggest challenge was working with the schools when they actually literally had to stop their instructional in the building we're in right now, and everyone had to learn from home.
I mean, let's face it, governance and education has been a brick and mortar, agency and entity for as long as we can remember. So to be challenged with a new way of doing business and supplying education has been definitely a daunting task. I can honestly say, though, it's really the personnel, both in IT and the staff and teachers and staff on the municipal side and first responders that have made this successful. They've stepped up and they've leveraged technologies that over the years we've built and we've leveraged, especially at this time. And it's really impressive that we've been able to shift gears successfully and provide the same level of services that we've provided, you know, by requiring students to come to school and individuals and residents to come into the building for permits and stickers. Those things are now being managed online, so it's a success actually.
So I'm sure your staff has spent a lot of time and energy behind the scenes trying to pull this all off.
Yeah, there was this. Let's face it. This is water no one's treaded yet. This is something that's new to everybody. We have been diligently for the last 2.5 months making sure that devices were in the hands of the individuals that needed them. We made sure that over a period of time those devices were secure with firewalls and antivirus and all of the things that we'd require if they were on site. We've worked diligently through our help desk solutions, scheduling time with all staff across the entire town to have remote help desk sessions with them to resolve issues that they may be having. So there's been a whirlwind of different tickets, help desk tickets and support requests that we hadn't seen in the past, but now we've taken those head on, and I believe, you know, all due diligence has been done, and wholeheartedly that we've been very successful with helping staff and teachers and administration through this pandemic, through technology.
So one of the biggest changes that I've seen and we've had to face is both putting public meetings online, making them digital, and doing the same thing with staff meetings. I remember when we pivoted just to the Windows 10 platform a few months ago, Windows Teams kept popping up on my screen, and I'm like, Rob, what the heck is this? It's annoying me, and now I use it every day. So I think it's one of the big changes we've had to work through.
We also, in the process of trying to meet everyone's needs, spun up some Zoom accounts. So that allowed teachers, K-12 staff, to actually register and get full licensed versions of Zoom so they could interconnect and operate on Zoom platforms with their students and staff. So it's been really powerful. We even have a third option, and the schools have been leveraging that most recently. That's Google Meets. So essentially it's a Google district, Cohasset is, and they have the ability now to leverage Google Meets as part of their Google Classroom. So we had a plethora of different connectivity mediums that any staff member could use, and boards and committees have also been very successful with it, albeit a little bit of a learning curve. It's been fun at times, and other times, well, I can't pull hair out, but it's been successful across the board.
So again, one of the other key decisions that was made 5 years ago was to have a unified town IT department. Obviously supporting the schools with its unique needs and the town with its unique needs. But that unified approach has really made a very big difference here.
I'm a firm believer in trying to manage as much technology in-house as we possibly can. We do have to leverage third-party vendors at times to do some things, but for the most part, we've taken individuals, and in some cases those individuals in the IT department were career changes, and we brought them in and we trained them specific to our technologies, and I have to say it's amazing the work that they do. I can't speak highly enough of the IT department staff, how they manage our technologies. We use a IT personnel matrix, which essentially breaks down our technologies and makes individuals the champion of that technology. So we may use Office 365 or SharePoint. We have a technician whose primary goal is to master that, for lack of a better word. We have a backup individual as well who backfills where necessary. That's an important document, and it really is visited once or twice a year to see whether or not the technology changes have to require or should require us to change how we approach those support needs across those technologies as well. No, in an existing IT department with 5 individuals couldn't possibly maintain all of that in its state. When we start looking at shared resources like we have servers or switching gear or network or fiber or whatever it is, even the phone system, you know, that's an inclusive technology that's spread across the entire town. we have an individual who champions or supports that. Can you imagine supporting 5 of those, 5 different vendors, 5 different solutions or manufacturers in multiple locations? It would be impossible. So from that perspective, we've saved substantial amounts of money by consolidating those services and assigning technicians to those services.
The challenges that we've all faced obviously have been continuing to connect with students at home, with parents at home, with residents at home, and bring people together. And we've most certainly seen some real progress. So where do you see this going as we kind of begin to move into the next phase of all of this?
I can only say that I'm so impressed with staff, with teachers and administrators, how they've leveraged technology, how they've adopted it. And this was done on the fly. Most people weren't prepared for this, but yet we had a number of cloud-based solutions that were available that they had been using while they were in these 4 walls. And they also had other cloud-based applications that they could leverage when this pandemic took place. I see us in the future leveraging more and more cloud-based solutions because, you know, these things, unfortunately, we'll probably see again somewhere down the road. I think we need to be prepared for that with regards to e-education and e-governance. So I see us as, and this may be fleshed out within the master technology plan that was just done, but essentially it will start looking at more cloud-based services and platforms so that we're not so reliant on internal servers and internal solutions to meet our needs, including our student needs.
So I know we've been able to leverage a number of state grants, in fact 4 major ones, $200,000 worth over the last 4 years, to build everything from our Aspen's new the school database, which allows parents and students and teachers all to collaborate, as well as security, IT security. That was one of the first things we did a few years ago. That was very telling. I've actually become a lot more secure in my own using of technology, and particularly emails. And the future holds even more changes for all of us, obviously. So what do you see coming for our ability to interact with residents in the next 6 months or year down the road?
So again, we have a good presence on the network. We're starting to promote the services through the website, which we've been doing for some time. Some of the newer things that were tied to the Community Compact grant and the best practices from the state was an electronic document management system. We adopted that system. We had some funding from the state. We also had funding from capital budget because they recognized how powerful this solution was and how it could transform government and even the administration in the school significantly. We will be launching that solution in the name of a public portal so that individuals, residents, constituents, anyone around the world could access that repository of information and data and search against it. We were talking a little bit before we started, and we mentioned, publishing Old Town reports back to the 1910, 1912 era. And some of the searches that were done, like influenza, showed remarkable similarities between what we're seeing with pandemic numbers and what they were dealing with back then. It's pretty exciting stuff when you can go back at, a few clicks of a mouse and find that information. That's just remarkable, and it's powerful stuff. So that is probably one of the biggest foundational products we'll be using for Cohasset going forward. It has applications almost in every single department. There are multiple processes that can be migrated from paper to electronic. I'm really excited and very proud of an entire team that brought this to fruition.
But it sounds like we have a great platform. We've come a long way, and we're going to continue to move a long way, I guess, as we go forward. So,
yeah, I think the entire organization, from board and committee members all the way down to staff, have jumped on board with the insight and the plan to move forward and leverage some of these things. And it's only because of that effort across the entire organization that we've been as successful as we have. So very proud of that whole.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you to you. Thank you to your whole team, and thank you to everyone who's been stepping up to make this all possible. And thank you to all of you at home for working collaboratively to get to where we are, and for all the work we're going to be doing in the future. As Ron said, coming soon, a public portal with more access to town's information and even more as we go forward. You can pay your taxes online, you can get your all facility stickers online, you can register your dog online, much more to come. Thank you, Ron, and thank you all. Now let's go to Chamber of Commerce President Larry Corthell, who meets with a couple of local business owners.
So we're doing well. We're open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for takeout. Our sister restaurant, Tinker Son, is open 7 days a week in Norwell, 707 Main Street. Our menu is updated daily. You can check Instagram or Facebook, and we hope you come down and get some curbside pickup. We're using all the appropriate PPE, and it's a safe place to have a nice dinner and keep some semblance of normalcy here in Cohasset. So please check us out.
Hello, yeah, we are open for a takeout, curbside delivery only. We're here 7 days a week. We're here Monday through Saturday, 12 to 8, and then Sundays we are doing from 4 to 8 too. So we're here at 8 o'clock every night. You call up, you place your order. Our menu is, whole menu is online. Hopefully we can take your information over the phone, and then when you get here, you just call us and we run it out, and we can do contactless delivery, where we just leave it on the table and we don't touch, or we can bring it to your car, whatever's better for you. And then we're just doing this every day of the week. So we're trying to feed Cohasset.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Cohasset Common, and thanks to all those who took part in making this episode possible. Don't forget that you can see this episode, past episodes, and other features like the Memorial Day virtual ceremonies on Cohasset 143 TV YouTube page and also on Facebook. Thanks again. See you next week.